Welcome to Marriage for Better for Worse. I'm your host, Pastor Bob Moeller. And for the next half hour or so, we're going to look at relationship issues. Issues that have to do with marriage, singleness, and family life. But we do so from a scriptural and biblical perspective, believing that God, the designer and the architect of marriage and family, knows how it's supposed to work. I'm not a professional counselor, psychiatrist, licensed therapist. I'm a pastor who believes that caring, listening, prayer, and God's Word can solve relationship problems. Our topic for this program is, does my spouse have a drinking problem? Does my spouse have a drinking problem? One of the most destructive habits that can undermine the trust, the joy, and the peace of a marriage is a spouse with an unrecognized, undiagnosed, or unacknowledged drinking problem. Now, not everyone who drinks has a problem, but there are those who do use alcohol in such a way that it is a problem. The majority of individuals with a drinking problem are in denial and will argue that they can stop anytime they want to. You know, that's a little bit like a person that habitually speeds and runs through red lights who says, well, I can quit doing it anytime I want to. I just haven't chosen to. You know, saying that does not put off the day that there can be a serious collision in the intersection. They will use a variety of excuses to justify their addiction, such as the stress they experience at work, the financial pressures that they carry, problems with their kids, or perhaps an argumentative or nagging spouse. As one of my friends who leads an AA group says, pour me, pour me, pour me another drink. Many times we use the justification of how hard our life is to misuse alcohol. In their minds, they drink only to calm themselves down or allow for some much needed relaxation or escape, or perhaps even say that it allows them to sleep better. They will point to the fact that they still get up for work, that they are sober at the job, perhaps they only drink on the weekends, and all this is evidence they do not have a problem. Despite their forceful denials, there remains the truth that they cannot function as they wish to function without the aid of the mind-altering and mood-modifying drug called alcohol. In other words, they can't do life without a drink. Nor are they aware that the way they relate to their spouse and their family changes when they drink. Sometimes people go into a happier mood. Sometimes they become more angry based on their level of intoxication. The result is that anyone who uses alcohol to cope with life is becoming a self-focused individual who has little emotional bandwidth left to care for the emotional needs of their spouse and their family. When alcohol is necessary to cope with life, it is going to change all the relationships that person is involved with. In essence, alcohol becomes the third partner, a mistress, if you will, or a paramour in the marriage. It will end up dividing the loyalty and the affections of the person with the problem. I have a friend who's worked in marriage ministry for 40 years who says that a husband or wife with a drinking problem cannot be sympathetic to their spouse above a 3% level. And the reason is all of their sympathy is going to themselves and going to their problem. And they aren't able to focus on someone else's need. Their addiction has become the true lover, the true focus of their life. What are the signs that your spouse or you may have an alcohol or drinking problem? I'll just list a few. Undoubtedly, there are more. You occasionally binge drink, particularly at parties or on weekends. In other words, there are occasions where you drink to excess and to drunkenness. given a certain situation. You undergo mood changes, or perhaps you slur your words when you've been drinking. You drink until you fall asleep, or in some cases, you pass out on the couch. You lose your inhibitions, and you act or say things you normally would not. And the end result is people are offended, people avoid you, people perhaps even break off their relationship with you. You typically drink without food or a meal. In other words, you drink by yourself and you drink without eating anything as well, simply to consume alcohol and enjoy its impact on you. And you enjoy associating with others who have a drinking problem as well. If 1, 2, or 3 of those are true of you, then you have a drinking problem. And it is going to begin to have its impact. It already is on you, your work, your life, your relationships, your family. What should you do if these symptoms apply to you or your spouse? Well, seek the help and counsel of a professional in this area. Begin attending a group for recovering alcoholics or spouses of alcoholics, such as Celebrate Recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous, or Al-Anon. And most important, cease all drinking today, both now and forevermore. You know, the people that argue, I can stop anytime I want to, I usually say, good, let's let that be right now. Let's have you stop today and never take another drink again. I have chosen not to use alcohol in my life because as a pastor, I felt that my example or modeling might lead someone with a proclivity toward alcoholism into an addiction. In other words, if they say, well, the pastor drinks, why can't I? And they have a family history of alcoholism and a particular sensitivity in their system, again, a tendency toward that. My example could be the thing that pushes them over the edge. I've also been concerned that teenagers, if they knew that I drink, might justify, well, pastor drinks, why can't I? And the end result might be a tragic car accident, a fatality, a death, or an injury. In other words, while I might have the right to do something, the scripture says, it doesn't necessarily mean that I should do that. While all things may be lawful, not all things are beneficial, the Apostle Paul has said. Can I tell you something? I have not tasted a drop of alcohol since college, and then I only sort of dabbled in it. And so for the last 40 or 45 years, I've stayed away from alcohol. I don't feel I've missed a thing. I don't feel I've lost out on anything. I don't feel that I've been denied some pleasure or treasure in life. My life has been fulfilling. I enjoy soft drinks. I enjoy fruit juice. I enjoy good bottled water, all sorts of different beverages. I don't miss having used alcohol. I can tell you I've been in so many situations with other people abusing it or using it, not knowing that they were now drunk or buzzed, where I really just simply wanted to leave, where I just really found the whole thing disgusting or irksome. You know what? I haven't missed a thing. Another curious thing, whenever I've applied for life insurance, there's always 2 questions that are at the top of every form. It's been universally true since I started taking out life insurance to cover my family. Number 1 question, do you smoke? And no, I haven't smoked. Number 2, do you use alcohol? Now, if these things weren't bad for you and weren't detrimental, why are they at the top of every single application I've ever filled out? Because the actuaries know the truth. Smoking and drinking impacts your body, your health, your longevity. It makes you a greater risk. If you or your spouse is still in denial, you'll have to consider an intervention in which people come who have also seen the problem, and together you lovingly confront the individual. Or you may need an ultimatum which clearly defines the next step this person with a drinking problem needs to take. You need to know where they can go for help for recovery. Actually be prepared to drive them there at that moment. And then define some specific goals for them to act on. Look, this is all going to require tough love. However, according to, again, Alcoholics Anonymous leaders that I've had sit in my office, and we've discussed this, and they know so much more than I do, they have told me there are only 3 ultimate outcomes for the individual with an undiagnosed alcohol abuse problem. They will end up dying from a devastating illness. They will have an emotional or mental breakdown. Some have even used the word insanity. Or they may end up in jail or prison. That is what they told me. I thought that was all rather drastic and rather severe, so I challenged them. They stood their ground. They said that's the only logical outcome of alcoholism. Proverbs 23:39 through 30 and verse 32 says this: Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. In the end, it bites like a snake and it poisons like a viper. Well, let's look at some questions based on situations, experiences I've encountered, actual questions people have asked me. My daughter recently called me in a state of despair. Not my daughter, this is someone else's question. It seems her and her husband recently attended a Christmas party where he consumed by his own count 9 glasses of wine. He soon became overly talkative, gregarious, and then told a female co-worker of mine that if they were both still single, he would definitely ask her out. Well, she was very upset. In fact, she was incensed. She threatened to report my spouse to my boss. She got up and she left the party. Well, my husband doesn't binge and get drunk all that often. He still has 2 glasses of wine each night before bedtime. I'm concerned that he does have a drinking problem. How can I convince him to get help when he vehemently denies he has a drinking issue? Well, denial is the most common response to a person with an addiction. No, I don't, and here's the reasons why. And they will become quite adamant. They may even become angry with you for suggesting that. But the truth of it is, as Shakespeare once said, methinks you protest too much. The more adamant, the more vehement, the more angry the person gets, the more likely that what you suspect is true. You can't always break through that denial. And let's be real, some people live in it the rest of their lives and let alcohol destroy their life and their marriage and their home. But it is possible through prayer. It is possible through having friends and associates that care about that person, confront him together or her together, and may possibly be able to break through that denial. Or, as so often happens, they may need to hit bottom. They may need to get the DUI and end up in jail facing some serious consequences. They may need to lose their job. You may need to separate for a season. In other words, sometimes the only way an alcoholic realizes they have a problem is that they hit bottom and have no further to go down. Let me say that we should not prevent that from happening. That's called enablement or codependency. If someone's behavior is destroying their life, you can confront them, but if they will not listen and they deny it, then let it go ahead and let the natural consequences wreak their havoc. It may be the only way they will ever wake up and seek the help they need. I recently got into an argument with one of the men in my Bible study group at church over alcohol. He said the Bible approves of drinking and that Jesus turning water into wine is proof of that. Another man in my group pointed out that John the Baptist was a Nazirite and was forbidden from drinking any wine nor cutting his hair. For my part, I pointed out to him all the negative comments the Bible makes about alcohol. In fact, I showed him a list on my phone sent by a marriage counselor of the 16 different negative things the Bible says about using alcohol. Who is right? Well, this argument rages and has within the church for years. Let's be very clear. I think the Bible definitely condemns drunkenness and the misuse of alcohol. It definitely condemns drunkenness, and it does not permit that. It is probably a fair reading of the scriptures to say that it allows for the consumption of alcohol in moderation. That is, to the point where it does not impact us physically or emotionally or cognitively. That under those circumstances, some people may choose to drink. As I've said, I have chosen, my wife has chosen, we've encouraged our children not to use alcohol. Part of the reason is we have alcoholism on both sides of our family and our extended family, and we've seen the wreckage, and we've seen the pain and the heartache, and we simply don't even want to go near the edge of the road. The Bible has more negative things to say on balance about alcohol than it has to say positive about it. And the nature of alcohol itself, I'm going to address in just a minute. What was the wine that Jesus drank, or the disciples? What was the wine that Paul told Timothy to use for medicinal purposes? We'll get to that in just a moment. But the Bible clearly makes no allowance for drunkenness. And in these other matters, we are not to cause our brothers to stumble by our freedom to eat or drink. And we are to make certain that it is to the glory of God. So there are certain conditions definitely to be met if we use alcohol in any measure at all. We have a daughter that calls us from time to time, and we can always tell when she's had too much to drink, which is sadly more often than it should be. Her speech is much slower when she calls, but she also talks much nicer to us than she usually does. Normally, she keeps her distance from us and is the first one to break off a conversation when we call. But when she's been drinking, she is much more open and affectionate with us. Is this how she really feels about us? If so, why does it take several glasses of alcohol for her to be able to be nice and express her love and desire for us? Well, you can see why this is conflicting. On the one hand, when your child calls up drunk, you have to be worried and you have to be brokenhearted. On the other hand, they are what you might call a nice drunk, that they are more considerate, they're more expressive, they're more loving. I have the question, which really is she? When she's sober, she's distant and detached from us. When she's drunk, she's intimate and reaching out to us. Well, because alcohol does lower inhibitions, it's probably true that in her heart of hearts, she really does love you and wants to be close to you. But when she isn't drinking, she's consumed with thoughts of being hurt or injustice or why she doesn't, want to be involved with you. I think you need to address the alcohol problem because that's going to do great damage to her own well-being, to her marriage, and to her children. And at the same time, you have to find a way to begin having a discussion where you can be open, loving, available without someone being intoxicated. And that's a challenge as well. You're going to need to seek a counselor, a pastor, someone to help you bridge the gap with your daughter. As a pastor, I have noticed a disturbing trend among Christians. When I am invited to perform a wedding and ceremony, and then invited to the reception that follows at, say, a banquet hall, that first hour or so or two goes rather well. Everyone seems to be on their best behavior celebrating the new marriage. But the longer that I am there, and there's an open bar, say 2 or 3 hours into the reception, usually about the time the dancing begins, people start to get drunk. Their behavior at times becomes embarrassing, even disgusting. I once saw two people get down on their knees on the dance floor and bark at each other. Well, I'm willing to do weddings. I'm wondering more and more if I should attend the reception. Well, I have a hard time seeing Jesus attending the wedding of Cana of Galilee and everyone getting roaring drunk and everybody passing out and getting down on their all fours and barking at each other. I think he would have left that event. He would not have blessed that. I know for years when my younger children were quite small and my daughter was in 8th grade or junior high, I would take her with me when I performed weddings because girls love to see weddings. They love the dresses, the flowers, the pageantry, the nails, the hair. And as a young teenager, she found that all much fun, and I enjoyed her companionship. But I had to eventually quit taking her with me because what happened at the receptions, as this question outlines, became ridiculous, became humiliating, became even scandalous, and I didn't want her to see this. And so I think it's very important as a pastor, if you're going to agree to do the wedding of a couple, to say, you know something, I appreciate you having me input into your wedding. I want input into your reception. I'm not going to choose whether you have pork wrapped tenderloin with bacon or, chicken Alfredo. It's not for me to choose what your dinner menu is or dessert. But I am going to insist that you close the bar and that you stop the flow of alcohol at a certain time. And that if people become inebriated and start acting out, that you will ask them to leave the reception, or else I'm afraid I cannot attend. I just do not want to be a part of something where we've asked Christ's blessing on the marriage and then engage in behavior that is truly scandalous, truly dishonoring to his name. So my advice is counsel not just for the wedding, but also for the reception. My friend at work told me that recently he and his wife had his mother, who is a widow, babysit their young children while they went out for the evening. In other words, grandma was babysitting. When they came home, his mother had drank several glasses of wine and was passed out on the couch, and the young children were running all around on their own. He was just furious and is considering breaking off all contact with his mother. Well, you can imagine why he would be furious. That young children left completely unsupervised because your parent has passed out on the couch and asleep. That's the kind of negligence that can get you in trouble with the law. Had one of those children broken an arm or burned themselves or went outside and got hurt or lost, that grandmother would definitely be liable and could face charges. Should you break off all contact with her? Well, I would not use her again as a babysitter until she agrees to go through rehab and faces her drinking problem. I would have a very direct, loving, and forceful conversation in which you would outline exactly what steps she needs to take in order to maintain a relationship with the two of you. If she's willing to seek out help, you should do everything to help facilitate that. If she denies that she has a problem and gets angry at you or whatever, then I'm afraid you're going to have to put a distance, not necessarily break off the relationship, but a distance between the two of you where her drinking could never do you or your children any harm again. And that might mean really putting her out on an orbit far, far further out in the universe than she wants to be. My question is not about alcohol, but about CBD or marijuana. My husband went through some traumatic experiences in his past and suffers from some anxiety disorders. His doctor prescribed medical marijuana for him. The problem is when he's high on the marijuana, he won't help around the house. He's habitually late for work and has lost his job on several occasions, and it seems impossible for her to carry on a normal conversation with him. He says it's the only thing that's helped him and he won't give it up. However, since he started using marijuana or CBD, our marriage has seriously deteriorated. Well, I don't see how getting high on marijuana is significantly different than getting drunk. It's a different way of getting high, but it sounds like the end results are very similar. I understand there may be some extreme cases where medical marijuana or CBD is the only thing that can be prescribed, perhaps to help somebody with pain issues or something else. But to quote Bill Clinton, it should be safe, legal, and rare. And it should be used very, very sparingly. And by the way, I say that somewhat cynically because he was referring to abortion. And abortion is never safe. And even though it's legal, neither is it rare. To save the life of an unborn child, yes. But to simply dispose of an unplanned pregnancy, no. And you know the use today of medical marijuana, it used to be considered marijuana a gateway drug to other forms. The states that have legalized it have seen a great uptick in auto accidents, in driving under the influence of domestic violence and other things that have occurred. I think legalizing it was a horrible idea, or at least making it available to the general public at will. For its truly medicinal purposes, there could be an argument for that. Well, there's not enough time to take another question. We do appreciate you watching this program. We ask that you pray for this ministry, that the questions that we address, the topics that we choose, would truly be a benefit to those who watch this program. And by the way, if this program has been a help to you, we urge you to go to our YouTube channel. We actually post all the programs that we've done, Marriage for Better for Worse, each is about 30 minutes long, is available on our YouTube channel. You just go to YouTube and you type in Bob Moeller channel, and all the different programs will come up. Many of them contain a detailed description of what the program is about. And the wonderful thing is you can forward that link to just anyone, anywhere where you feel it might be of help. Or if you wish to watch the program again or watch it with your spouse, you can do that as well. We're honored to have you part of our viewership and hope that we will see you next week. Remember, marriage is for better, for worse, and for keeps.